Welcome to another episode of It's a Long Road, the Rambo series podcast, where we are delving deep. I don't know if deep's the right word. We are delving into the Rambo series franchise. We are dealing with right now season 1 as we go through the movie First Blood. And with me, I have another special guest, Scott from the Church of Tarantino Podcast. Did I say it right? The Church of Quentin Tarantino or is the Church of Tarantino?
No, it's the Church of Tarantino.
Church
you
of
did
Tarantino.
it right.
Okay. So tell me about your podcast, Scott.
Well, my podcast is based on going through chronologically the films of Tarantino in the Tarantino verse, and that includes the 3 films that he wrote but did not direct. So I do them all in chronological order. You were kind enough to come on, which will probably be by the time I think you said this comes out. You'll have already your episode will come out. You've done Jackie Brown. That was my 6th foray in. So the reason I started it was I had some other podcasts. I had a partner I was recording with. His life is kind of evolved differently than mine. My family is already older and moved on. So I have free time on my hand, and he is kind of starting a young family. So he doesn't have as much, and they just had a child. So I was looking for what I wanted to do. Originally, I had always wanted to do a Tarantino podcast, but I was under the assumption that there was a lot of them out there. And when I did the research, when I finally decided I'm going to go out on my own and just have some special guests, and I wanted to do Tarantino because he is my favorite director. And I realized that there's no one out there currently, as we speak in 2022, who is doing a podcast about him like this. It's just solely about him. There have been ones that have been out that did like a 9-episode, run through of his films, but they did that in like 9 weeks and they're done. So no one is constantly doing Tarantino. So I decided that I would be the person who is going to carry that mantle. And if anyone joins on afterwards and comes in and does their own, that's fantastic. But, it's nice to be the only person out there right now, which is strange because how much he means to the cinematic universe that I am currently the only person talking about him on a monthly, bi-weekly basis.
That's awesome. No, great to tap into that well early. And I know what you mean by being quote unquote the only one, or if anyone joins after. When I started Going the Distance, the Rocky series podcast, there was no other podcast at that time that was covering the Rocky films, all the films in order, like we're doing with these Rambo films. Still, with the Rambo films, no one has done that as well. That no one's actually covered the whole franchise in order with a bi-weekly type discussion with guest hosts, and going through the films in order, breaking them down, talking about their fandom. Of course, there's been many episodes talking about the films, action podcasts, or dime a dozen out there. So there is something unique about that, and specifically about Quentin. Yeah, there's a lot of maybe standalone episodes about his films, but yeah, same idea, breaking down scenes that you're doing, going in the films in order, talking about his side projects in the order of release. It's a great idea, and so you definitely will be the first. But other voices, great. Yeah, if somebody else does a Rambo franchise,
absolutely,
podcast, I hope they become a guest on my show. And vice
absolutely.
versa. Yeah, because it just spreads the fandom, right?
Yeah, I feel like podcasting is that one area of creativity where you're accepting of other people joining in on the fray, as opposed to, in some places you may want to be that only person. Like in music, you want to be the first person to do whatever it is. You want to be the first into grunge, the first hair metal. You want to be the tip of the spear, so to speak, of whatever genre you're starting. But I feel like in podcasting, it's a great community. You like to talk to the other people. I've always explained to people, why do you podcast? Well, it gives me a chance to sit there for an hour to 2 hours, talk to someone who is mutually as excited about the film as I am. It's just like you would when you used to watch movies before the days of social media. You go with a buddy and you come out of the movie and you guys would sit there and talk about it for hours if you really enjoyed the film. And I feel like this is just what podcasting, for me, at least in this film area, is to me. I get a chance to talk to people that I never would have got a chance to meet in my life, and we get to share the same experience, and it's just fun to bounce back and forth with them.
Well, certainly not going to be, my wife doesn't want to hear me talk about this, so I've got to talk to somebody about this.
Exactly. My wife is like, why are you? It's like, yeah, I know. A bunch of grown men talking about movies.
Before we dive into the film, Scott, tell me, what is your fandom? What is your knowledge? What's your background about the Rambo franchise, and specifically First Blood, the film? I
love Rambo. So my first in was Rambo 2. Again, that's it's a big jump from this movie, from First Blood. It's I think we talked about it even on my podcast, where I think Rambo 2 was that, Stallone kind of embraced the 1980s action film that it was, because it came out in the mid 80s. This obviously First Blood came out in 82. Number 2 came out in 85, which by 85, we were starting to get that 80s action here. That was really starting to become a thing. I think some of it started with him being Rocky. And as you notice also in the Rocky podcast, I'm sure as you went through, the movies went for more serious. Not that they became campy, but they definitely embraced the 80s everything goes kind of mentality of souping it up and making it more fan friendly, as not as a dramatic story as like the first ones were. So Rambo First Blood Part 2, the strangest title of any movie, was my foray into it. And then I got into Rambo First Blood, and it really was quite a contrast. I remember my parents actually not being as upset about me watching number 2 as they were about 1 because of how serious number 1 really feels. First Blood really has a dark tone to it. I am a veteran of the Iraq War. I was in the Army here in America, and from 03 to 04, I was over there fighting the first part of the war. Watching this again with PTSD, and like there's so much more relevant to me now than any of the other movies. The other movies are just fun popcorn movies, except for number 4. I have heard on your podcast people talk. I think number 4 is one of my favorites. Sure. Feel like it went back to the way First Blood was. It was more serious. It was more about how, war isn't glamorous, and war really sucks, and no one gets out of war clean, no matter what side you're on, and then parlays into now Tarantino as there's been rumors that he has thought about actually remaking First Blood based more closely to the book and maybe having Adam Driver star as it. Now, will he or not? I don't know, but I kind of now hope he does, because then we could have some more synergy with your podcast.
That'd be amazing.
Then you'd have an extra season to put in, because you'd have one more.
Would that be like a bonus season for sure? I guess that'd be season 6. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And I know people were up in arms a little bit when they heard about this. And I have to remind people, Stallone didn't create Rambo. He embraced it, and he made it his own and catapulted it to a whole level beyond the books. But it is based on a novel source material. So if Quentin takes that same novel, makes it his own Quentin Tarantino styled, based more on the book activities than the original First Blood film, go nuts. I would love to see it. I would just love to see 10 different directors that I like showing their own version of that story. I think it's, to me, it's like Romeo and Juliet, or any kind of classic literature. If you want to make it your own and your own visual style, there's nothing wrong with that. The Rambo character can definitely be revisited by different actors and directors throughout the years, and I hope it is.
As your listeners probably heard when your first podcast with Mr. David, the writer, fantastic job on that podcast. But he even said there was 25, 26 scripts before they finally got to this one.
Yeah, sure.
And some were ludicrous. So it's been rewritten 26 times before it ever made it to the screen. Yeah. I think if your listeners are fans, I think what Tarantino would bring to it, I think he'd bring it more like Rambo 4. I think it would have that. It would definitely be the more violent side, like portrays.
Yeah.
But I also think he would do it justice. I think of all the genres he has fallen in love with, and how well the service he's given those genres by his movies. I don't think it would be in bad hands. Some other directors, you might be like, ooh, sure. I don't think he should have it.
A Michael Bay First Blood film.
Oh, dear God. Oh, God, that would be awful. That would be awful.
Oh, man. Okay, so before we roll into the film, do you mind if join me for a couple of emails and cracking wise with me on those emails?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so this is from Peter. He's from Australia. He says, "Hi, Ryan. You wished me, Peter, on a previous email to elaborate where Peter stated that my Rambo ranking was First Blood, then 5, then 2, then 3, then 4. And he says he's certain that you stated these sequels possibly in that order on a Slycast episode I did with Craig Cohen. If I did do that, boy, it's funny. This happens every now and then. Like, people who listen to our shows, it's funny. They'll remember things that I've said that I don't remember saying, which... That's not a bad. I just question where I put 5. And like I said at the time, maybe when I recorded that episode with Craig on Slycast, I might have been feeling passionate or defensive about 5 and the hate that I was receiving. So I might have been doing maybe a hot take to rattle cages, saying, "Oh, 5 is better than part 2 or whatever."
All of them,
yeah. So right now, that's probably not my ranking, and I don't know when I'll do a ranking episode per se. So he goes on to say, "So your last podcast was very exciting to listen to, especially listening to the end of Act 1 in the forest scene. For years, from 1988 until 2006, when I had only viewed the VHS version of First Blood, I was surprised to see snow on the ground via high definition on DVD." So, of course, he's saying that the format of TV was...
The pan and scan.
Yeah, the pan and scan, exactly. He's saying that when he got him on DVD and got the widescreen, now we're getting see that snow. "I was also surprised that you discovered that you could only briefly witness Rambo tying up Ward just before Rambo narrowly dodges the firing line from the other 'I got him, officer.' So, yeah, that was a fun little discovery we did by watching the film like very closely that he takes out that officer and he's able to time up very quickly again to the tree. Again, there's deleted scenes in that whole forest sequence that we just don't see that. Yeah, that was probably one of the scenes where we probably see John Rambo taking the officer, tying him up, and then going back to that sequence.
I believe the original cut was almost 3 hours long.
Yes.
And there was a point where he wanted to buy the entire film and just burn it. Like, he was so upset with it that he did not like it because for whatever reasons, he had it re-edited and it was knocked down to about, what, an hour 40, I think. Yeah, so I think a lot of what you miss is on the cutting room floor just to make it tighter. And for whatever reason, Stallone hated that version. You know, I guess we'll never know.
I know.
You know, I don't know what could have been so bad for 3 hours. Maybe it dragged, but
maybe it was just dragging. But he said it was, I think it was also not just the film. He hated it. Apparently he hated his performance. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
It's weird. So maybe a tighter performance of just like what we see, because it's an amazing film. Sly was right. He gave us what he gave us, so we maybe would just trust what he says. But
agree.
I think every fan would just be, for better for worse, we'd love to see what he hated.
Oh, yeah. Like, do like a Coppola long cut of Apocalypse Now where it's like 72 hours. Yeah.
Sure. We'd all watch it, of course. He goes on to say that he wants me to try playing out the scenes a little bit longer. I think that's what he's trying to say. So when we watch a scene, maybe play it longer. The reason why maybe I stop it, I stop it, I think, is because I don't want to forget what I'm about to say. I admit I don't really come like prepared with notes per se. I do have a couple beats in my head that I want to mention while I watch the scene with my co-host, but I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't, because I will notice things. Like, I'll just like, oh, I didn't notice that before. So I'll stop. I don't want to forget that I'm going to say something, but I'll try to play it out a little bit longer. So Scott and I will maybe watch the scene a little bit longer and we'll do our comments after. I don't know. Maybe people don't want to hear the whole scene out. I don't know, but keep listening, folks. We'll work through it. And, he ends his
work in progress.
Yeah, it is a work in progress. Sure. Peter ends with much appreciation as a free rider of your podcast, as he also listens to my other podcast called The Worst of the Best Podcast. He said that, you know, he maybe one day he'll be a Patreon to give me tips or whatever. Because I said on one of my episodes, like, if you join my Patreon, which is in the show description, even if you just throw me $1 a month, it just says, hey, Ryan, thanks for all your editing and what have you. Don't get anything extra free, I admit, at this time, but it's like a busking, right? We're performing free entertainment for hours every month, and it's like, hey, here's $1 towards your entertainment. So I appreciate those who have joined Patreon to do that, and Peter, I know you will one day. I know you will. All right, so that's that one. The next email is from Steve. Steve says, Ryan, really enjoying the podcast. The Rambo movies had a major impact on me that carried me into the Army and all the way to the Special Forces. It was one of the proudest days of my life when I was inducted into the Special Forces Regiment and put on my Green Beret for the first time. You inspired me to rewatch the movies, and I just wanted to point out a little detail I hadn't noticed before. In the early scenes of First Blood, Stallone is wearing his boots and trousers bloused in the fashion of an airborne soldier, and he wears his field jacket in the same manner as the National Guard troops. Even in Rambo 2, he still wears his boots in the prison in the blouse fashion, like Troutman. It is subtle clue about how much the character still clings to his military past, and a very cool detail for the wardrobe department to include. Thanks, Steve.
It is impressive. First of all, congratulations, Steve, and thank you for your service as well. Green Beret, that's definitely, it's not an easy task to become a Green Beret, that's for sure.
Of course, I'm Canadian Navy myself, so I'm not too familiar with the different regiments of the U.S. military. So Green Beret, that's still a real thing?
Special Forces, yep. It's great, yeah. So it's basically Special Forces. It's out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I guess if you went in order, and then maybe your guest will, on your next podcast, if he hears this, he'll correct me. But Rangers is like the first rung. Then I believe it's Special Forces, and then Delta. I know Delta and Special Forces are in the same, but I think Delta's the next level. Special Forces in the middle there. I mean, they're pretty close, but Delta's usually that very top secret. No one even knows. Kind of like the SEALs.
Sure.
But if I'm wrong, Steve, he'll correct you, and
but still,
correct me, and I'll listen.
Intense training and
unreal. Yeah. Yep.
Good for him.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Steve, for your service. Absolutely, and glad you're here to talk to us.
Yeah.
So thank you for your service. Yes, the Green Beret must be the beret color that they wear, I guess, is the idea.
Yes, it is. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We have a couple berets. Yeah.
All right. And now last thing, it's not an email. It's a YouTube comment on the YouTube channel. So basically I just stream the audio for YouTube because there's a few people for whatever reason, and Tim is one of them, who just listens to the show on the YouTube. I guess maybe at work people can have it up or something and they can. Cool. All right. So this is Tim. He's from England. He says, he's great. I love his comments. Company leader calling Raven. Come in, Raven. Hi, Ryan. Great episode as always. The screaming from the deputies caught in the traps and Rambo's attacks were really something. I agree with your comments that this section of the film could have passed for a horror movie. You mentioned there was 45 minutes of the woodland police chase scene and a lot was cut out. Do you think the director's cut would ever be made? So we just talked about that, Scott, you and I right now. So I don't think so. Honestly, I want it, but I don't think we'll ever see it.
Or sadly, I hate to say it, maybe we'll have to wait till Sly's no longer with us many years from now. But maybe the only way it kind of happens because he was obviously not happy with it. So
yeah, that's possible.
It could be unfortunately have to be a post-mortem type of thing to get.
Agreed. Thanks for reading out my previous comment in the last episode. I know it's not an email, but it's just easier for me this way. I also wanted to ask your thoughts on why Stallone has never written an autobiography. Almost all of Hollywood greats have, and coming from a writer himself, you would think it would be a process he would enjoy. Maybe he hasn't peaked yet. Many thanks for all the content. Tim, Bristol, England. This comment is over, he says. Okay. I like that. Great, Tim. I love your humor and appreciate your support. Be one of the few viewers that actually watches this on YouTube, so thanks, man. Okay, well, great question about the biography. I've actually wondered about this, Tim, myself. I've wondered about this for years because he's 75 now. Arnold's had one. He's right. Great biography by Arnold, one of his contemporaries. I don't know. Maybe if he's superstitious, if he thinks if I write a autobiography, then my life is over. It's like a greatest hits album, right? When you kind of write an autobiography, at what point do you write it when, nothing is over, right? Yeah. Is his life over? Yeah. He's doing a new TV show right now for Paramount Plus called The Tulsa King. So Tim's right. Maybe he hasn't peaked yet. Maybe he still has things to prove. And when you write a biography, you're kind of saying, for example, one of my favorite bands is Aerosmith, and they had an incredible biography that I read almost 20 plus years ago. It was called Walk This Way. One of the best rock and roll biographies I've ever read. Kind of true. They haven't really done anything in 20 years. And so it's almost like a cap of your life or career when you come up with a biography. So maybe that's why he hasn't done it. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Maybe he's the type of person also, he's continued, like you said, he's doing a new show. Isn't the movie, I wanted to call it The Untouchables, not The Untouchables. Isn't he doing like number 4 of that?
Oh, Expendables.
The Expendables, yeah. Isn't he doing like Expendables 4? I thought that was getting ready to come out.
He's a cameo in that almost. I think he's passing the torch to save them. But yeah.
But he seems to be constantly working, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera as a producer. So unlike my good friend, we're best friends, Quentin Tarantino, who's like, I'm going to be done at 10. Stallone doesn't feel that way. Stallone doesn't feel like he's done. He'll probably keep going until it is the last day. And maybe he sees his autobiography as all the work I've done and everything you've seen. That's who I am. Maybe he's more of a personal person, doesn't want to spill all the details. Like sometimes it feels like a money grab for people, especially if they've had maybe like for Aerosmith, maybe they were kind of like, we know this. The good stuff is behind us now.
And it's okay to say that.
Stories. Yeah, absolutely.
Like they've given us decades of music. It's okay to say and play your greatest hits till you die. That's fine. You don't have to keep writing the next great American song or film. At some point, it just ends. It's okay to recognize that. Billy Joel did that. Billy Joel says, I don't have any more hits in me. So he just stopped writing them. But that's fine. Yeah. You keep touring with the hits, and I don't have anything more to give. That could be it, too. I have some theories, too. I know there's some privacy issues in his life, and I wonder if he doesn't want to talk about his autistic child and then the death of his other son. And there's some really hard things I don't know if he wants to talk about. I don't know if he had the best relationship with his father. I think he's got a weird relationship with his brother. And so I think by just not talking about anything, nothing could be rebutted or brought out in the open. So I think it's a can of worms he might go to the grave with.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing. Maybe he's a person who just believes in keeping his personal life.
Biographies, I think, will be written on him upon his passing.
Biographies, yes.
Yeah. I think people will have tell-alls when he leaves,
And that'll give, again, he won't be able to, yes or no with it, but again, it won't be from his mouth, so it'll all be what we think we know. I
read a great biography on Tom Cruise. It was quote-unquote the unauthorized biography, but it's the same guy that wrote a biography, I forget his name, on Princess Di, and he's not a schlub biographer, but they have to say unauthorized because Tom Cruise would not authorize this because it talks about his time in Scientology and stuff.
Yeah, Scientology wouldn't authorize it either.
No, exactly. However, when you read it, you're like, no, I don't think he's lying. I don't think the stories and a lot of the people coming forward and I'm not saying it's I like Tom Cruise, actually. I think the religion he's in is weird, but it's actually very fascinating behind the scenes on some of his behavior and maybe the way he thinks is actually very helpful to actually understand him a bit about his life and stuff. So I think we might see that with Stallone. I think maybe something will be written on Stallone upon his, hopefully years to come, but his passing. Okay. All right. Well, you ready to roll into this film?
Let's do it. Let's get going.
So
let's go to war.
Where we last left off, Troutman and Will Teasel, they met. They had their great dialogue back and forth. Great scene. And now we're at the scene with Rambo inside the mine shaft or whatever, cave shaft thing, eating pork, eating his boar.
That he wanted to kill for real on screen.
Yeah, he did want to kill us for real. But they told him, no, if you jump on this wild pig, it will throttle you.
Kill you. Then he kept asking about all these other animals. Well, what about a lynx? They're like, no, what about a deer? They kept telling him everything you want to do, he'll kill you. And then he goes, well, they said, what about a jackrabbit? He goes, Rambo can't kill a jackrabbit. And he goes, well, it might bite you still. So it's just funny that you got this macho man going to kill with the bare hands. But then when the reality comes to it, you go, wow, movies make things look a lot easier than they really are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, what I love, though, and I think I talked about the previous episode, because there was a scene where he actually kills the pig, but now we see him with a fire and he's eating it. He's actually cooking this thing. Well, number one, it's a lot of meat. Maybe he's going to curate the meat. Maybe in his mind, he thinks he's going to be in this mine for a long time. So he's going to make a lot of meat, I guess, to feed himself. So in theory, do you think at this time he really thinks he might be holed up here for a while, and that's why he had to get a lot of meat?
Yeah, it does seem like that's what his plan might be. But then I'm also going to think of it through like the cinematic person, that it's more impressive to see a giant leg of boar as opposed to, like him rashing out just very small pieces of it. But he doesn't know what's coming his way at this point. He's up on the mountaintop and he does not know that the National Guard is coming for him. I don't think he even thinks they would bring out the National Guard. It says a lot, in America, to bring out the National Guard. It's usually the governor's got to call that out. You don't just get to be a local sheriff and call out the National Guard. So they saw him as quite a threat to be bringing the National Guard in to try to stop him. Obviously, after what they just saw happen to their friends in the woods, they feel like they're not prepared for what they're about to face. And so I think he might be hunkering down for the long haul. Because as in the last scene, as his colonel tells Teasel, this is what he's trained for. And that's what he tells him. This is my world. I'm the boss here. This is, in the town, you're the sheriff. Out here, this is my world. He's ready. He's hunkered down in the mine. It's freezing cold. He's in a tarp and he's eating, food that he just caught. So he's there for the long haul.
I think there's two things going on here. I think you're right about cinematically. It looks more manly. I got a boar and I'm putting this meat up. Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of a jackrabbit.
A little jackrabbit. But I think the jackrabbit makes more sense. This little bit of sustenance for the day. Because he can't really, how long can he have this unrefrigerated cooked meat lying around, right? It wouldn't last too long.
True.
It's colder out there, mind you. It is colder.
Yep. I think it's Christmas time, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's around Christmas,
yeah, it is.
I believe. Because there's a Merry Christmas sign and stuff going on. Yep.
Yeah, people forget. They always say Die Hard is the best Christmas movie. I think First Blood's a better film than Die Hard. I'm going to say it right now. I will. First Blood is a better film than Die Hard.
I think the reason they say Die Hard is because I think Die Hard's at Christmas because you're at a Christmas party. And unless you really pay attention to the sign in the sheriff's office, you really don't notice that it's Christmas.
There's a Christmas tree in the sheriff's office.
This is true.
And in Teasel's office, there is one too. But anyway.
True.
In the book, though, Rambo did eat, I think it was an owl. So he did.
Yes.
Which makes more sense. So I think in the mind of the filmmakers, it looks better to have this manly meat. But in Rambo's mind, it probably just makes more sense just to kill what you need for the day.
It's got to be easier to show killing especially in 1981 when you're filming this, to show killing a boar than killing an owl.
Yeah, it'd be hard to film.
I don't even know how you kill an owl, without a gun unless you shot it. And how do you not blow it away that you have any meat left? So
he used an arrow, I believe, in the book.
That's right. This is the only film he doesn't have the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
His standard weapon of use.
But I found that interesting when I read the book that he was already good to go with the bow and arrow in the book.
State Police calling John Rambo. Acknowledge. State Police calling John Rambo. Come in, please. Acknowledge.
If you're listening, Rambo, here's your situation. You are surrounded. Every possible exit has been blocked. Every highway, road, every fire break. You have our word that your services to your country will be taken into consideration and you will receive fair treatment. Just respond. We can work everything out. Over.
Anything?
So they're saying if you're listening, because they know that he got a radio. He got a radio off of Galt. Was it he got the radio from?
Yeah, so Galt when he fell out of the helicopter.
That's right. So he's got a radio. If you're listening, might have to assume very much so he'd be listening. That's why he's got the radio, to listen for the traffic, to listen for movements and things like that. But they've told him, okay, fine. We have everything covered. Every exit is blocked. And we saw in the previous scenes, they had a lot of people on the ground. So there is a lot of activity going on here. So they're not wrong. They're doing a pretty good job covering their ground. They know he's up high. So the only way down is down. So they also said here that we'll take your service to your country into consideration, I guess, meaning when you get caught and you go off to jail. Yeah, well, we know what the funny thing is, spoiler alert if anyone hasn't watched part 2. I mean, we know he does get imprisoned. So I guess is the death penalty on on the table? Because he's in a high security prison. Do we ever find out if it was for life or not? Do you recall?
I think I read it was for 8 years he was imprisoned. When we see him in Rambo 2, which the great thing about it is they didn't even cheat it. He's been there 3 years, which is exactly the length between the two movies.
There you go.
It was 82 and 85, so he was there 3 years.
He loves doing
Smart. That. Yeah, it's good. It works well. I just love that the guy says you'll be treated fairly. So the state trooper doesn't know how the local sheriffs have treated him, which is what started this whole thing. That's the domino that tipped this whole thing to start. The fact that they're saying that is just it's laughable because he already knows that's bullshit. He's like, that's not true. Nothing's going to be fair. And as we get to eventually, the response even shows that they're not going to treat him fairly. It's an exaggerated response for one man in the woods. So, and I always wonder, you're in the military and I'm being in the military. The general public only has a sense of what the military is like based on like movies or things they're told, but they really don't know unless you're there, unless you've actually experienced it. You really can't understand. This gentleman that they're talking about, Rambo, he's the best at it as there is. They're usually dropped behind enemy lines and have to survive for weeks. Nothing's blocked. Rambo can get out.
Yeah, I know.
Rambo will go higher. He'll walk farther. He'll keep going another state away. He'll go into Canada. I know this is filmed in Canada, but we're supposed to think we're in Washington. He'll walk into Canada before you find him. If he wants to get away, he's going to get away. There's nothing you can do about it. It is kind of funny that this local law enforcement thinks that they're in charge when in reality, as we learned earlier in the scene, you're not in charge. I'm in charge. This is my home. You're not here. It's like if a bear walks into a neighborhood, right, the bear's in trouble because we'll shoot it down. But if you walk into a bear's den, right, you're in trouble. Yeah, and he's the bear in this situation.
Great. Love it. Now we got Troutman and Teasel. They've walked into the purview here of the state trooper, and Troutman's about to ask anything. Yeah, Rambo's come back and said, come and get me, guys. I'm over here in this, yeah.
He's like, guys, you're right. I'm coming down. I'm right down.
But of course, Troutman knows everything you've just said. Troutman himself is wholly aware of the same situation, so we'll see how he figures out how to get a hold of him.
He took a radio off of one of my deputies.
And he has to be listening. If I was in his position, I'd try to pick up some information, maybe catch some crosstalk.
Of course he's listening.
I love that. Sorry, Peter, we paused it already. Anyways, I love Troutman's tells this other state captain that we saw earlier. It's like, well, of course he's listening, you numbnut. Yeah, there's a little bit of a movie exposition there saying he took a radio off one of the state trooper, which isn't bad to do for us moviegoers because we've seen this movie so many times, but people might have forgotten during all the chaos and action that he does have a radio, and he got that radio from Galt. I don't mind that movies do this. Sometimes kind of just remind the audience that he does have a radio and where he got it from.
Well, it also leads to this great line. It's informing the audience and even these two characters in the scene that you've bit off more than you can chew. You're not listening to what I'm saying to you. As Troutman is, trying to get to him, like, what part of I trained him to kill? He will go through all of you. That's why he says that body bag line. What part of this are you? It's like you're trying to tell somebody, but they just don't want to listen. And he's trying to explain to him that, look, you've bitten off more than you can chew. All right, let me just get him. And it'll save you time. Let him go to Seattle, become a car wash person. He'll sing the Working in the Car Wash blues, and we'll pick him up and everything will be fine. But because, unfortunately, Teasel, because he just can't let it go. He just has to, he's the authority figure. How dare you cross me? Even though he started the whole thing, he just can't be wrong. He can't accept his responsibility. He caused all this mess. He caused all his people. His friend is dead because of him and his actions. And how he allows his deputies to train, that he still won't listen to this guy who's a decorated Green Beret. He survived Vietnam at the time and still is one of the most bloody wars ever. Yeah. And they just still won't listen. So, he tried the whole way. So they're lucky that this movie was done like the book is. Things don't go as well in the book.
He's not going to break radio silence. No, not for us. But he might do it for you, Colonel. He's your boy, isn't he? Maybe you can talk him into sparing all our lives by giving himself up.
I can try.
At least we'll get a radio fix on his position, if you don't mind setting him up for us.
Setting him up for you? That's like bringing the pigeons to the cat.
Okay, so this is great dial. These two, they're back and forth. This is interesting because Teasel, of course, isn't too sure. Like, he said earlier, and I don't know whose side you're on. I don't know if Troutman was going to talk to him until Teasel suggested. It kind of looked like to Troutman, he's like, well, I can try. Do you think he would have offered to try to talk to him had Teasel not suggested it?
I don't think so. I think when he said, just let me go get him or let him walk out, because he knows, like he says, he trained him. He knows what they've been through. And that's the great thing about this. And maybe we get a little bit in Rambo too. We get to see him. But again, I think it's a little more action heavy. It's not more realistic, the stuff that happens in number 2.
Sure.
But I think he knows the level of which Rambo's at. And if Rambo is back in his mind and has gone back to the jungle, he knows what he's capable of. And he's trying to get these guys to just back down so he can just get them out, let them go, let them cool off, let him get his mind right again, and then try to help him and try to get him the help he needs. Because again, at this time, this is really a movie about PTSD. And at the time, no one really had any idea what PTSD was. It wasn't a thing that's in the news like it is now.
Right.
They don't know what they're facing. And they think it's just some guy who's a nut job, but he's not. The military teaches you how to turn this on, but it doesn't teach you how to turn it off and how to come back from what you see and what you do. It takes a very long time. For some, it never happens. For some, the only way they do it is they find that they have to take their own life because they can't handle it anymore. I don't think he was going to try to get him out of there anyways. He just wanted him to just let him walk through the woods. By the time he's out of the woods, he'll have calmed down, don't chase him, and get him back under wraps because they just don't understand the level of the bear that they're about to face, that they're facing off against.
So I love how they're going to try to get a radio fix on him. Now, I admit, this is 1982. These are just your standard radios. They'll show later here in the scene that they've got some sort of like radar signal pinger so they can try to almost cross-fix.
Yeah, triangulate, I guess.
Which is, I don't know how this would work because aren't there like a lot of walkie-talkies everywhere chattering with each other? How are they pinpointing these two communiques? I know this is what before the days of satellite, like the satellite communications and stuff.
I don't know how they're doing it.
Is that movie now?
I think it's movie magic. I think it's just
All right.
I mean, again, if you think about it though, at the time in 1982, the general public doesn't know what. I guess in the general public today doesn't know exactly what the military does and doesn't have, because if they put that out there, everyone would know what we had.
Yeah, I just
so
don't
there's
know.
That kind of, I guess, secret.
The little thing I know about radio, we use radios, of course, in the Navy and stuff. I'm just trying to think if a sailor went off on a port somewhere in Australia, crazy, didn't want to come back to the ship, but he had a radio, and we're talking to him on the radio. Even in 2022, I'm like, I don't know how to find where he is with this. Like, there's no indication of which direction he's in with the radio. Yeah, okay.
No, I'm with you.
Hey, Don. Thanks for bringing your people out.
Anytime, Will.
So Will just quickly talked. He left Troutman to get the radio set up to talk to Rambo, and he goes over to this guy named Don. It looks like he's part of the National Guard. He goes, "Hey, Don, thanks for bringing your people out. Anytime, Will." So I love how even the National Guard are kind of like on these first name basis with the local sheriff, which is odd. But we know the National Guard, their weekend warriors is kind of what they're called, because I believe, I guess they're locals. They work. They live in the town, and it's kind of like the volunteer fire department. You could be a mailman, but when a fire breaks out, you go fight a fire. You're the volunteer fire department. So I guess the National Guard might be on that same level in this town. Is that what I believe? This guy might be a school teacher, but now, but now he's put on his National Guard hat. Is that
exactly what it is? Yes, exactly how it goes. Yep. Okay. So I think the slogan was like 2 weekends a year, 2 weeks a year, 1 weekend a month is how they kind of train. So they go away for this 2-week expedition. They do some more training, but 1 weekend a month, they do their drill, and then that's it. So yeah, they are kind of like a backstop, I guess. It would be more of like if the main force is out fighting, let's say you're fighting Russia, which God seems like is more and more possible every day. You're out there doing that. And then let's say Mexico's had enough of America and they come in and they're going to take America. The backstop while the troops are overseas would technically be the National Guard. But a lot of times they get called out for natural disasters too in America. Flooding in like New Orleans or this and that. So
in this situation,
they're not.
In this situation, they're not going to call the Green Berets from Fort Bragg. Right now, they're just they're just going to say, "Hey, the locals will kind of take care of this." So we got the state police.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that they're actually calling the National Guard. I would think this is more of a SWAT. Yeah. But again, we're 1982, so I've got to get my mind back to what it was 40 years earlier, where now we're not just mobilized police units and they're already armed better than the National Guard.
Yeah, some of the police forces out there are pretty highly trained.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah.
Come on, Bobby, put the magazine away, will you? Pay attention.
Bobby is working the piece of equipment that's going to triangulate Rambo's position. I guess he was looking at, was it a Playboy or something?
But the funny thing is I love how the guy who's actually in charge of Bobby is the Don, his commander. He's the captain. And Teasel's just like, he doesn't give a shit. Like I'm the general of this whole operation. Yes. Like he really technically can't give Bobby orders. Technically, Don's supposed to give the orders, but Don's just like, whatever. I'm just here for the paycheck. This is funny.
I love how he's looking at a magazine. 40 years later, this would have just been the guy on his phone instead of paying attention to
swiping left or right on Tinder.
This is a piece of equipment. What I might do, honestly, is I might actually post this in some sort of Army Reddit. on Army Reddit, take a photo of this and ask, this was in the First Blood film, the idea of this machine, because it looks like it might be a legit type of machine. And so I'll ask, what is this called if this is real, and would it be able to triangulate or find a position of a walkie-talkie by another person as the film? So there you go. I'll do that and see if I can get that ready for the next episode.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Tease was about to say, we may only get one crack at this. Come on, pay attention, Poppy.
We may only get one crack at this.
So now we're coming back to the scene of Rambo and the mine shaft sleeping.
Calling Raven. Come on, Raven. Covey leader calling Raven.
So Covey leader, Raven, is that Rambo's call sign, I presume?
I believe Raven is his call sign, yes.
Yeah. In the book, Troutman and Rambo did not have a relationship at all.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard when you were talking about David, he said that too.
Yeah, they don't have a relationship at all. The only thing that Rambo knew of Troutman, so when Rambo was in basic training or Green Beret training, what are the two training parts or whatever part, because I know there's multiple training that you do to get to the level of Green Beret. So he heard Troutman's voice over the loudspeakers. So there'd be times when the colonel would speak to the troops, like, come on, guys, today's a big day, or whatever it might have been, like an announcement. If this is your, CO speaking, so kind of dialogue. So he did recognize Troutman's voice in the book because of his time during his training, but that was it. They never fought together side by side. So we're going to hear some dialogue here between, of course, Troutman and Rambo, where Troutman says, hey, we've blood, sweat, and tears, and saved, I've saved your back. Kind of showcasing to Troutman's ability as a soldier as well, that he's bailed Rambo out of tough situations. That's what we're led to believe here. That Troutman's almost in the same older version, but on the same level as a maybe a 30-year-old Troutman would have been a very comparable foe to a 30-year-old Rambo.
I think it's also a good change from the book too. I think having Troutman as basically the father figure for Rambo helps. If he was just a nobody, just showed up, how would he ever come down? Actually, the series, the rest of the movies wouldn't even work.
No, they wouldn't work. No.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had anything left.
Also, in the book, Teasel in this book, when he says, I don't know what side you're on, that was Rambo's thoughts in the book. So Teasel in the movie says that the Troutman. So they kind of kept that storyline in, but they put it on Teasel's shoulders. But in the book, Rambo didn't know which side Troutman was on. He thought he was being betrayed. He was mad. He was mad at Troutman. Like, whose side are you on?
I don't blame him.
Covey leader to Raven. Talk to me, Johnny.
Covey leader to identify Baker team. Rambo, Mesner, Ortega, Coletta, Jorgensen, Danforth, Barry, Krakauer. Confirmed.
Love Sly's performance here when he's looking at the radio and his mind's racing. He's like, that is Troutman's voice. Now he's just verified the team. This isn't some impersonator. Maybe it's been a few years since he's here, and it's going to sound different over the radio too. A little bit different. So now he's like, oh, that is Troutman. He just identified the team. He's got the call signs. So in his mind, do I break radio silence to talk? He has this, I would say, almost like soldier obligation. Even though he's a civilian official, he's no longer on the payroll with the government. But there's this, I've killed and I would have died for this man. And now he's calling me. Do I break my radio silence he owes it to Troutman to talk to me. Even he kind of recognized that.
I think some of it might be too, is he's woken up from sleep and he's obviously, his mind is kind of being pulled back to Vietnam. So the last time he probably heard that voice on the radio was in Vietnam. So I think part of him is startled and he's not exactly sure where he is at the moment. I think it takes him a moment to realize, all right, I'm in this cave. I'm in Washington. I'm not, hiding out somewhere in Vietnam. For a moment there, he may very well have thought he was back in the jungle because the last time he heard a radio call out that way, he was in the jungle. So I think even for him, he is a moment of where the hell am I? Getting his bearings, to properly know that, almost like pinching himself, like, is everything I've been doing a dream? Am I really in Vietnam? He just doesn't know where he is, especially given his PTSD and the severity of which he has. There for a moment that he definitely was out of sorts of not knowing where exactly he was in time and space.
Great insight.
This is Colonel Troutman. Talk to me, Johnny.
So I love how he goes back and forth. Raven, Johnny. He's personalizing it, also giving him his call sign at the same time. And he calls him Johnny, which shows personal relationship. Because he's John J. Rambo, but he calls him Johnny, which is almost like a young boy
dad figure
relationship. Yeah, daddy figure, exactly.
They're all gone, sir.
It's him. Get on it.
Rambo, are you all right? Over.
Baker team, they're all dead, sir.
I love how he opens the line, they're all gone. Baker team, they're all dead, sir. Of course, the last person was Boy, was it Danforth? Was that who was looking for at the very beginning of the film?
It was Danforth, yeah.
I think we're led to believe that he tried to reestablish or see everybody that he was on this Baker team with, and Danforth being the last person. That's why he's in such a mental health rut, too, because when he threw that photo at the beginning of the film into the fire, he realized the whole team's dead. You know, everyone that he fought with has either probably died, probably by suicide and or the cancer since the war, and he's the only one left. Now he's kind of updating Troutman, like, hey, everyone you just called out, everyone you just named to me, I'm the last one.
It's a tough mental state for him to be in, too.
Oh, Delmar Berry.
That's right, Delmar, yep. And then, learning that he's gone, and they seem to be really good friends. I think it was his last bastion to hold on to some hope for. At least I have one more brother. I still have at least one brother I can talk to and have around and commiserate with, someone who knows what I've been through. And when he loses that, and then he has this events happen, it's
Delmar Berry, that's right. And he was start with the D. I've told people, this is a fan podcast. I'm not a nerd, okay? There's nerds out there who can, even quote every line in this film, but no.
Maybe the nerds will help you out with that radio thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. I want the nerds to help me out. Okay. Troutman says, not Delmar Berry. He made it. I'm just going to go back 10 seconds.
They're all gone, sir.
It's him. Get on it. Rambo, are you all right? Over.
Baker team, they're all dead, sir.
Not Delmar Berry. He made it.
Berry's gone too, sir.
How?
Got himself killed in now. Didn't even know it. Cancer ate him down to the bone.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I'm the last one, sir.
It's good to hear your voice, Johnny. It's been a long time.
Look, John, you've done some damage here, but they don't want any more trouble.
He's northwest.
So they got him northwest. They have a direction. Obviously, they don't have a distance. I guess that's better than nothing, northwest. What they could probably determine, this is the nerd in me, is what's the reach on these walkies.
Yeah.
Maybe the range is only a mile. He's northwest a mile. They can kind of figure out, okay, where can he hide northwest of here? So now they know he's northwest. Teasel's got what he needs, but the conversation is going to continue here with Troutman.
Yep.
That's why I've come. I'm going to come in there and fly you the hell out.
Just you and me. We'll work this thing out together. Is that fair enough?
Where'd you come from, sir?
Bragg.
I tried to get in touch with you, but the guys at Bragg never knew where to find you.
Yeah, well, I haven't been spending much time there lately. They've got me down in D.C. I'm shining a seat with my ass.
I wish I was back at Bragg now.
We get a little bit of insight here. Rambo actually tried to look for Troutman. I wonder what he would have done had he met Troutman before all this. What do you think? What do you think the purpose of just to touch base, have a cup of coffee with?
Well, like you said, he's on this maybe journey to find the rest of his fellow soldiers, his friends. It's been so long since we can all remember not having an ability to find someone on a social media or, being at their fingertips. Before, if you didn't know somebody where they were, you just didn't know where they were. That was just the way life went. You had to wait to find somebody who might know where they are. Right. A lot of the younger generation has no idea what that's like. So he may have been looking for him because if there's one person who could probably look into personnel records, it would have been Troutman. He could have maybe given him the exact address and location of where these guys, when they get out of the service, where they actually went. That's one of the reasons I think he was reaching out to him. But I just love, it is such a great line because it's such a military line of a colonel or a commander who used to be in the field and now they've got him doing a desk job. To say he's shining a seat with his ass is absolutely perfect. It's exactly something I could hear a commander saying who used to be, running troops and now they've got him doing pencil pushing stuff and they hate that. They just hate that about it. So It's a great line.
We can't be soldiers forever, You're not 20 something anymore, Colonel. You're 55 or whatever now. It's a young man's game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when you come in.
I can't do that, sir.
Well, look, John, we can't have you running around out there wasting friendly civilians.
Did you see when Rambo says, I can't do this, sir, I can't come in? And Teasel's face there, like, I knew it. Even this Troutman guy can't get this guy to come in. He can't control his machine that blew a gasket. He's like, yeah, I knew it. There's just no point. But he doesn't care anymore about this conversation. He's like, I know where he is. But he had that smug reaction.
He does. Yes. But if you look at Troutman rolls his eyes. He's a little disappointed that Johnny won't kind of stand him up. But he also knows that, shit, I think he's entrenching himself. I think he knows the firestorm that could be coming this way. And he's like, oh, shit. He's a little upset because he thought he could talk him down. But at the same time, hearing what he's saying, he's realizing that he's now a man with nothing to lose. He's got no friends. He's got nothing to come back to the world for. What he knows is war. So if you want to give him a war, That's why he wanted to go back to brag. He wished he was there. Being in the military, and a lot of times it is like being in prison. You get indoctrinated into the way of life. And after a while, it just becomes something you're used to. When I went to Iraq, I got a chance to come home. I got a 2-week break around after being in Iraq for about 8.5 months. And when I came home, it was very weird for me, even though I've been thinking about coming home, because I've been so used to the way my life had been for 8 months. That was my normal. Being home again wasn't. And it was very strange. I felt very like a fish out of water for a while. Even when I finally did come back, it takes time. You get yourself into this mental state to survive where you're at. And then after a while, it just becomes what you know. And then when you're pulled out of that, everything seems foreign. Even though you're back home where you always were, it still seems foreign. It takes a long time to get. So he was looking for that normalcy, which is why I said he wished he was at Bragg, because that makes sense to him. Right now, this world he's in doesn't make sense to him. A lot of people don't respect the Vietnam soldiers and all this stuff. Like he just can't make sense of it. But at this point, he realizes how much of a bullshit war that was. So there's a lot internal turmoil going on. And now he's got this prick of a cop just giving him the business just to give him the business. At that point, Troutman knows that, oh boy, we might be past the point of no return here.
Yeah. Troutman says, John, we can't have you running around wasting friendly civilians. I love it.
It was a little warning to Teasel, too. Yeah. Like, hey, he's going to start wasting you.
There are no friendly civilians.
Well, I'm your friend, Johnny. I was there with you knee-deep in all that blood and guts. I covered your ass more than once.
So Rambo thinks on that one, like, he's like, I got this guy asking me to do one thing, but my training and situation I'm in is making me do another thing. What do I do here? You can see it, like, what do I do in the situation? But he's going to come
face that you've got to pause on. That's an angry face. He is thinking right now, Teasel, that son of a bitch. Like, I'm not giving that guy the satisfaction. Yeah. Like, because he's about to say what he's about to say, but he's like, right, that look right there, your listeners can't see it, but that pause is perfect. He's got that look of like, F this dude. I'm not giving in to Teasel. You can just see it in that great facial expression that Stallone is giving in this moment. Like, he's really invested in this character. It's great.
Seems like bailing you out of trouble is getting to be a lifetime job for me.
There wouldn't be no trouble except for that king shit cup. All I wanted was something to eat. But the man kept pushing, sir.
So I love that. So Teasel's there standing next to Troutman, and he goes, there wouldn't have been any trouble. I just wanted something to eat. And I love it. Kind of this all started because Rambo was just hungry. He just wanted a bite to eat. There wouldn't have been any trouble had they just let me into the cafe, had a piece of apple pie and a burger, and I went about my way. He goes, the man kept pushing, sir. The man kept pushing. But Teasel walks away because I don't have to stand here and listen to this trial, so to speak. I'm not on trial here.
The great thing about that line, I don't know if your listeners got to hear David, but he was talking about how Rambo originally was going to be a hippie. He was supposed to have the beard and the long hair. They wanted to look like a hippie, and this is the thing, that sets off Teasel. But the way he's using the man, he's not talking about the sheriff. He's talking about the man, like the man is trying to get me. He's trying to hold me down. So he's like using that as a term, not necessarily just for Teasel, but he's just kind of talking in that hippie sense of like the man is trying to get me down and I'm pushing back against the man. I just love that the man kept pushing. I just love how he used that phrase, and that phrase, I don't know if it came from the book, but how Stallone at least put it into this scene. It really works. There's more context than just him talking about Teasel in that moment.
Yeah, again, in the book, the events of this in the movie, it could have happened in the movie world because it's not spoken to or not spoken to. But yeah, this was like the 15th town that Rambo had come across in recent events where people kept doing this to him. So this is the one that broke him. He just had enough.
You see that state sheriff, he realizes, or the state trooper there, he realizes that son of a gun. Because, that earlier episodes you talked about him, what's going on, and he's trying to tell him, all this BS about what really happened, and he realizes that son of a bitch, he lied to me. You know what I mean? Like, this all could have been avoided.
Well, you did some pushing on your own, John.
They drew first blood, not me.
Look, Johnny, let me come in and get you the hell out of there.
It's a great way to get the title of your book and your movie in, and such a great line. I mean, that's what First Blood means. If anyone is wondering where they got the title from, that's what it meant. Is he was attacked. He didn't do the attacking. So now they brought the war. Now he's going to bring the war to them. I just love that line. And now he delivers it. And then that 1,000-yard stare he's got there at the fire, just preparing for what's to come. He just has that idea of like, all right, I've been here before, and he's hunkering down and ready for it.
I love that line, they drew first blood. And it's funny, I wonder how many people would have understood the term first blood without hearing this whole sequence. I don't think I did. I honestly don't think I would be lying to say that I understood that meaning, first blood. Basically they drew the first punch. They punched or they shot the first shot at me. I wanted something to eat. They kept pushing, but they drew first blood. You see those videos on, YouTube or Reddit or whatever, where you got this guy who's talking a lot of crap and keeps pushing. It's like, dude, you're pushing on the wrong guy. The guy's holding back because the guy that's holding back knows I can destroy you, but I'm not going to. Just leave me. Actually, just recently, Mike Tyson on the plane. Did you hear about that one?
Oh, yes. I've seen the video.
Yeah. And I love that Mike Tyson's not getting charged with anything.
Yeah, I mean, he poked a bear.
Yeah, he poked a bear. Exactly. So,
and they threw a water bottle at him.
Yeah, this guy on the flight was just harassing Mike Tyson. He's probably figuring, hey, I'm on a plane and Tyson can't do anything. What's he going to do, attack me? This guy kept harassing Mike, and Mike just turned around and had enough and just pummeled him. He didn't get charged. I love it. Everyone's like, who's going to... Yeah. You poke a bear long enough, you're going to get your head.
Yeah, well, he did. And that's what's about to happen here, too.
Rambo? Are you still reading me?
Cubby leader to Raven. Rambo, acknowledge.
He's all finished, Colonel. Got a real good fix on him, though.
That's a great little shot there. First of Rambo looking at the fire. He's got his head in his hands. It's kind of a back shot of that. It's a great little sequence there. Now, Rambo's shut out. He's probably planning his next move. He's realized he's got to break camp. He's probably also realized that by having this conversation with Troutman, he's probably exposed, so he's going to have to move. Troutman tried, didn't work, but I love how Will's like, now he's got that kind of tenseness again. He's finished, Colonel. He's not going to talk to you anymore. He doesn't care about their past. He doesn't care at all that they have a history or past. I love how he says, we got a real fix on him, though. He's just, here we go. He's also just as determined to find Rambo as Rambo is. Now, we know the events that are coming up that Rambo's going to do. So are we to assume that's what Rambo's now just doing? He's just going to take the war to the town now? He's just enough of this?
I don't know. I feel like he knows that they're not going to stop. So I think he's preparing. I think he's more preparing defensively than offensively. Okay. I mean, I guess offensively in a mindset, for his defense, it's not like he decides to come down the hill and bring the fight to them. He knows that his best chance is to stay up where he is. They don't know where he is. He can use all the surroundings in his advantage. He's going to let them show their hand first, and then he'll make his moves based on that, which is what he ends up doing. Teasel, unfortunately, he's got this mindset of like, you're going to pay for.
So Zoom crashed. It looks like it's still.
It probably will.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's all good.
Strange. I could have just stopped. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen again. All right. Well, sorry, guys. We had a bit of a technical difficulty. Zoom decided to crash on us, so it was great. I actually got to text Scott and say, Cubby Leader Raven on Twitter to let him know that I'm coming back. So anyways, you were in the middle of a thought. I took a few minutes for us to reboot, so I don't quite remember where you were. We got cut off, but we're just going to finish the sequence here. It's just right at the tail end anyways, but we'll just finish it.
I'm first line. I'm going to put every man I got up on that ridge. Now we'll get him my way. Stretch a skirmish line.
Okay. So Teasel's basically saying here, now we're going to get him my way. Troutman there mumbles, damn it, right at the end there. Now, why do you think he's saying that?
He's saying that because he knows that, one, Teasel's an idiot. Basically is sending up National Guard troops there's no reason to send that many in. And especially you'll cover this probably in the next episode. But what they end up trying to do is like totally against the law. Like they're basically going to do a military strike on one man based on something another person did. It's completely against the law, but whatever. The reason that Troutman says, God damn it, is because he knows that now Teasel wants to push. He heard what John said. He keeps pushing. And this is what this guy wants to do. He wants to keep pushing. And this is the wrong man to be pushing. And so now Troutman's worried because now he knows he's going to have a bunch of dead National Guardsmen and police officers on his hand because John is going to eventually get it. These guys are National Guard. No offense to anyone who's in the National Guard, but you're not in the same vein as Special Forces. As your emailer, Steve, said, he can tell you the National Guard is like an athletic league softball team going up against a professional baseball team.
I was just going to say
it's not the same. Yeah, you're not in the same league.
You're both playing baseball, but one's a major athlete of the world.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. Sure. One does it with beer and some laughs, and the other one does it for their livelihood. Yeah. They're in serious trouble, and I think Troutman knows that. He tried to avoid any bloodshed or any skirmish, and unfortunately, Teasel seemed to want this the entire time. He's starting to learn that about Teasel. And the one thing I'm surprised with, and again, I guess this is the book and probably would have been weird to do. I'm surprised Troutman doesn't think about taking out Teasel. I'm just surprised that he doesn't think about doing that himself or going higher and realizing that we've got this harebrained teasel. And, he could have easily gone to the Pentagon and had the governor involved and had this whole thing kind of squashed pretty quickly, considering what they're looking against. But it wouldn't have been a good novel and it wouldn't have been a fun movie. So
no. Well, Troutman's hands are tied. He was sent by the government to take care of this and to see what he could do, to see how he could help. And he is trying to help. Also just kind of monitor this activity. As you know, in this matter, this is definitely a state police matter that the military, because he's a civilian. John Rambo is a civilian. So you could argue Colonel Troutman is there as an advisory, offer whatever input, but he actually has no authority there. He actually has no authority.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
To do much other than just offer his advice and do what he can.
However, he does have the authority to tell the National Guard to stand down since he is the highest ranking officer there in the room.
So interesting. So but, National Guard wouldn't have to answer to Troutman in theory there?
I mean, he is a colonel. The military is the military. You take orders from who you take orders from. But yeah, he would be the highest ranking officer there. And he could have probably gotten the National Guard to stand down if he so was inclined to. But like I said, if we did that, then we don't get the great movie and we don't get the sequel. So
no. It's funny. I was just thinking, you didn't get any quote unquote action here, but that's what makes this film amazing is the non-action sequences. They're almost, I would say, more fun to watch. Action's action, but I love the interplay between the characters.
It's great, especially when Troutman comes in. It's him and Teasel, and it's Troutman and him. They're trying to play chess against each other, and one's a master and one's just an arrogant guy who's beaten his buddies a couple of times. So he thinks he's a master. Also, Troutman knows what Rambo is, and Teasel just has an idea. He just thinks he's some veteran bum and this and that. He's not all that he's cracked up to be. He completely disparages him, even when he says, "You know what? You're one of your boys, your machines blow a gasket." Right. Like he doesn't take the threat seriously, even though he was almost killed. I know. Rambo even told him, "Let it go," and he just couldn't. He just couldn't do it. So I guess at the end of the day, he's lucky.
Tell us again your podcast, and we forgot to mention what episode can people go back and listen to me on your show.
Yes.
So if they have any, if they're like, I don't want to listen to Quentin Tarantino podcast, but they might be huge fans of Ryan.
Get it. Perfectly fine.
Sure, no. But if they want to listen to my guest spot, what did we cover together?
We covered Chapter 6, which is Jackie Brown. So I broke down each main movie into chapters. Chapter 1 being Reservoir Dogs, and then through all the way through 12, which will end in December with Once Upon a Time, at least the first season. And then I have little Bible studies, which I go through. Sometimes there's one a month. In certain months, when I have 5 Fridays to fill, I do 2 a month. And those will cover scenes inside the movie of that month. But you were on the June Chapter 6, which is Jackie Brown. You and I we talked about almost 2 hours about one of the most underrated films in his catalog. But it's also the end of his 90s run, too. So it's a great episode. And I hope you check it out. If you're a fan of Tarantino, you just like listening to people talk about movies, it's the Church of Tarantino Podcast.
Awesome. Now, how was your experience? And would you be willing to come back again on another episode?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Whether it's this season, next season, Rambo 2, maybe not Rambo 3. Rambo 3 I've always found is the, for
I
me,
need you. I need you for those ones too.
I'll do it fine. Yes, I'll do them all because that's like the redheaded stepchild one, which is interesting because, obviously it's in Afghanistan and that's when we thought it was just Russia went to Afghanistan.
That's why I might need
got an interesting turn to it.
I might need some expert story on that conflict. Yeah. Well, Scott, it's been a real pleasure to have you on today's episode, but I'm afraid to say that the episode's over.
Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.